All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes last meeting. Second by Councilmember Moreno. Thank you. 3 yeas, no nays. The motion is passed. We're going to go out of order just a little bit. We're going to go with the quickest issue first, number 4. And then we're going to go to the meat of the meeting with the task force update. So it's Mr. Larry Barabino. I saw him. Oh, there he is. There he is. All right. Going to have Mr. Barabino come forward, make a presentation. Mr. Larry Barabino here to clarify some of the misconceptions and inaccurate information about NARD's role.
Good morning, council members.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come here and provide clarity on the programming that NARD offered during summer months for our youth and teens, and as it relates to our stipend program. So what I want to do is just do an overview of our teens programs, our spring teen internship data, our teen career camp session 1 data, our teen career camp session 2 data, and our teen sports challenge data. And these are programs that NARD have been offering from January until current, just ended more or less this summer. So just an overview on the NARD stipend-based teen programs. And this program is designed to provide teens the opportunity to gain valuable academic, cultural, and professional experience to cultivate a responsible, well-rounded, career-ready youth, teens, while earning a stipend in the process. For our fall and spring internship programs, which our teens have an opportunity to earn a 4-week stipend after completing 6 weeks during the fall and the spring. And this program consists of, we work with teens ages 13 to 17 years old. Our teens participate in academic, athletic, aquatics, and cultural enrichments through hands-on experience learning that that's tied to the many careers at NARD. Additionally, we also provide additional curriculum, including entrepreneurship and soft skills development with our teens. And that's, of course, through 6 to 8 weeks. It's after school programs. And also on Saturdays, they come and they get involved in our teen council program. So this spring past, we had 128 teens that participate in our spring internship programs and our teen council programs. And that program ran from April 1st to May 12th. And 128 teens received the stipend on June 27th. And we always explain to our teens that these are not jobs. And we explain that to our parents. These are internships. These are programs that we've designed and we've asked and received funding to help keep our kids off the streets during the afternoons. And when they complete it, you know, we're told that 4 to 5 weeks afterwards, they'll receive a stipend for attending and participating in these programs. Our teen career camps. NARD teen career camps are offered to teens ages 13 to 15 years old. And it's a career exploration and job preparedness skills, as well as financial literacy, character building. We also offer recreational and cultural programming as well with our teens. The teens attend the camp Mondays through Fridays from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. They're provided breakfast, lunch, and also field trips that they participate in. Teens earn a stipend of $30 a day for 3 weeks. $30 a day for attending for 3 weeks. We do 2 3-week sessions. The maximum stipend that they can receive is a $450 stipend if they attend each day. And the parents are told during orientation that, again, these are not jobs, these are camps. And at the camps, the teens in session 1, it went from June 5th through June 14th. And session 2 went from June 23rd to July 15th. In session 1, we had 547 teams that attended. Of the 547 teams, 475 teams, which was 87%, received their stipends on between August 4th and 8th. There were 72 teams that didn't receive their stipends, which was 13%. 52 of those teams will receive their stipend with the second group. We weren't able to cut a stipend in between. So finance instructed us that those 52 teams will receive their stipend with the second group of campers. So 52 out of the 72 will receive their stipend on they will receive their stipend with the second group. 9 of those 72 teams were kids that attended a camp that we didn't have applications at all on. One of the challenges that we face is we have partners such as Landry School, Booker T. Washington schools, and they have kids that's coming to the school for other things. Well, they allowed those kids to sign in while they were there for the camp. So when we identified that, instead of turning the kids away, we reached out to the parents and have asked the parents to come and do the paperwork, which at this point, the parents for those 9 kids have never came in and did an application because those kids were never registered at that camp. And 11 of the 17 kids were missing different documentations, such as false bad contact information. We tried to reach out to the parents and different missing banking information. In session 2 went from June 26th to July 14th. We had 363 teams to attend. And we were informed by payroll that on August 31st, they will process the stipends for 591 teams that participated in this second session, but also is that 591 teams, 591 also consists of the 363 in session 2, the 52 in session 1, and we had 176 teams that participated in our evening summer sports challenge program, where we had teens ages 13 to 17 years old that went in a 6-week program to where that they participated in 7-on-7 flag football, 5-on-5 basketball, and volleyball. So our teen sports challenge, as I mentioned, it was a 6-week challenge. We technically had 446 teams to enroll, but only the 100 and something that I listed completed the summer, that summer program. And those teams received a stipend of $400 after completing the 6 weeks program. And that program actually runs also Mondays through Saturdays, but that's the evening program that was created to get teens 13 to 17 years old off the streets during summer months. So our challenges. One of our challenges is incomplete application from campers. We have parents that come in and do the applications, and often enough are not willing to disclose their financial situation and our information, because our programs is federally funded. We use CDBG funding for our program, and we're required to capture all of that information and data. Another one of our challenges is partners allow campers to attend without applications, and also just allow them to sign in on the sign-in sheets. And when we identify that, again, we still try to bring those kids into the fold and have those kids to receive a stipend after attending instead of turning them away. Also, we have missing direct deposit information. And then also we have closed bank accounts and rejects. We have parents that often would put their bank account information on the application when the monies cannot be deposited into their accounts we have parents that would try to put Cash App accounts on there and the monies cannot be deposited. We work with Capital One, and Capital One allow the students to open accounts. But the key thing is they have to keep a minimum of $5 in accounts for the account to remain open. And if they withdraw the remaining $5, the accounts close. And we wouldn't know that until the city go to direct deposit their stipend funds into those accounts. And so some of our solutions that we're looking at is one thing is we say is to not accept the incomplete applications. The other thing is we're looking to pre-populate all of our attendance sheets moving forward, where we know who to expect at the camps going forward next year. And last, we're looking to do an electronic application submission and attendance submission to reduce human error. Because of course, sometimes the data get inputted into the system and there are challenges or is inputted wrong. And so that's where challenges lie at also. That's the end of my presentation, Council, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno.
Good morning, Mr. Barbino. Nice to see you. My first question has to do with the session 1 data. Out of the 547 teens, it looks like from what you're giving us, really only 20 of them had issues with pay based on having an application problem.
Yes,
Okay, so that is a very small percentage. That's roughly 3.6%.
yes.
Of session 1. And so I very much appreciate that you're working on a solution to get it down to 0, which
Yes.
is great. But but what I don't understand is there's 52 teens who didn't get paid, who apparently seem to have a correct application. So what are you hearing as to the problem for those 52 teens?
Sure. So it could have been incorrect data being input into the system. It could have been the bank information. It could have been the bank information could have been a challenge. But once we rectified it, again, we were told that we'll have those 52 added to the second
Right.
group. Yes.
Okay, so that means it'll be for those 52 teens, it'll be, and I'm not saying this is your fault. I think and I know you don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but what I see here is really a finance problem, a finance department problem. So we have, roughly 52 teens where they've completed the program 11 weeks ago and they still haven't received payment. So now for the second session, we have 363 teens in session 2, and then 176 in the Teen Sports Challenge. We're going to be paid on August 31st.
No, they're actually going to finance informed us that they're processing the payroll on August 31st, and the kids will start seeing the monies in their accounts between September 1st and September 6th. Depends on the bank and how it's deposited. So they're going to process them on August 31st. And it'll be deposited. They'll start seeing the deposits between September 1st and September 6th.
So it'll take at least from when they finish the program to when they get their checks, roughly 7 weeks, 2 months.
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, I don't think that this is a NORD problem, and I'm hearing kind of the same coming from workforce development. And even others from within City Hall who've called my office who've said, this really hasn't been a NORD issue or a workforce development issue. The real issue has been with the finance department processing all of this and getting the kids paid. I think that this is, really beyond frustrating. And unfortunately, as we just mentioned during this past council meeting, that the city can't seem to pay anybody on time. The finance department can't seem to get anybody paid on time. And we've asked repeatedly over and over again for reasons as to why this keeps happening, but it's whether it's a teenager who's working for a summer program or whether it's a vendor. I mean, we've got an air conditioning company who won't even work with the city of New Orleans anymore because they don't get paid on time, or whether it's a small business, whether it's a minority business, whether it's a large contractor, they don't want to work with the city of New Orleans because they don't get paid on time. And that just puts us in such a horrible position in so many different ways. And when people don't want to work with us, that means that the few contractors who do, then they really do jack up their prices. And then we end up with super expensive contracts and potentially not the best companies bidding on contracts. I know that that's not your issue, Mr. Barabino, but you are unfortunately dealing with the negative impacts of what happens when people don't get paid on time. And you are responsible for really critical programs for youth during the summer. And when youth don't get paid on time, there's a possibility that maybe they can't go buy their school supplies. There's a possibility that maybe now they're just so discouraged. They're like, you know what? I mean, this was a big old waste of time. I mean, there's so many different repercussions that come with just not getting it right. And I appreciate the work that you do. And thank you for recognizing that there is that very small pool where the applications didn't get right and how we can get those right moving forward. But like I said, I mean, I calculated it out. It's 3.6%. I believe it's, very similar with workforce as well. But the finance department is really what's failing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno. Councilmember Jeruso.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Barabino. I just want to ask Councilmember Moreno's point, are there any vendors that you're aware of that are similarly situated? And let me take a step back. I love the fact that you have solutions in the PowerPoint about this is how we're going to try and avoid some of these red tape problems. But if there's any other vendors who are an issue with NORD who aren't being paid, I'm not saying you need to name names right now, but we would like to know. Because I think what Councilmember Moreno is getting at is it's not only a problem, obviously, for kids, but at the same time, if you can't get your HVAC vendor paid, your light vendor paid, the grass cutting done, then that affects our ability to help kids and it affects NORD. So if there's any outstanding issues, we would like to know about those.
Definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Barabino. I appreciate your presentation, and I do applaud the fact that a significant number of youth were employed in our city this summer. I do regret that that everybody did not get paid, but it's important to have these sessions because it allows numbers to come out. Because I went to a community meeting on Saturday, for example, and someone asked me a question saying, why didn't any of those children get paid? As if no one got paid, and everybody should get paid. But these sessions are very important to get the facts out. I don't make any excuses. I don't intend to spend my time vilifying you or Ms. Villavasso because I believe that you were sincere and you wanted to see our youth employed and you did it. The finance department question that we ask is the one that was asked when I worked as the head of economic development 25 years ago. But honestly, why don't vendors get paid on time? And in this particular case, why don't youth get paid on time? So I appreciate the fact that you've offered solutions. We'll certainly work with finance. We have our budget chair here, who is a great point person to finance. But I do want to leave here making it clear to everyone who's watching, there is not some systemic desire to not see youth get paid for working in our city. I want everyone who was working this summer to know that there is an attempt made to pay everybody by September the 6th. I'm going to ask you and Ms. Villavasso or whoever it might be to give us an update so that we can report to the public whether or not the youth get paid. And then when it's time for the applications next year, I want everybody to apply. This is not going to be an issue of where, oh, that program doesn't work, so I'm not going to participate at all. That's what's wrong in our city. At the end of the day, we are going to work hard to get everyone paid. You've offered solutions, and I want to make sure that every parent, every administrator has youth to apply to this program next year as they've applied in the past. It's important to recognize that the city council was very strongly supportive of providing these jobs. We, in fact, approved more jobs than were asked for in the presentation that was made. So we want to see as many youth employed as possible. And in order to do that, we have to at least focus on emphasizing that we want people to work in this program and that we are going to get them paid. Please update us on September the 6th and let us know that everybody's been paid, because I will tell you, I will go to community meetings and make that clear.
Sure. And listen, I do want to say this, that working with Norman and his team, we're looking to really have solutions going forward, whether it's bringing in a third-party vendor, whether it's bringing in someone else to manage that process. Because I know years in the past, it was outsourced to where that it was an entity that managed that process, that paid the teams and that took care of it. And that was only their focus was there to do it that way. But we're looking at with today's technology of other ways of moving forward and doing this. And, and as indicated with the 52 teams, like I say, with us on our end, we know that errors happen from the north side and making sure things were input properly. And, but the goal is to make sure that these teams receive their stipend. But from the North's perspective, our goal was to take teams off the street, right? Our teams don't work. And the goal was really to get them to get involved in more programs and today the teams are telling us what they want to see, what programming they want to see. And our goal is to provide those programs. And I want to thank the council because last year in our budget, you guys did put additional funding in North's budget for programming, right? And we're able to expand those programming. One of the key things that we're looking to do is continue to expand those programs with teams to give them options. We hear the teams loud and clear where they're saying they need money, right? A lot of them are single parent homes, fixed income. So we allow them to come and participate in whether it's our teen council programs, our teen ambassador programs, but they're coming and participating in programs and earning stipends. And that's one of the key things that I want the parents to really understand is NORD do not employ teens for the summer except lifeguards. And our lifeguards that we employ become city of employee workers, and they get paid bi-weekly as the same as every other city employee. But all the teams that participate in our programs, they're stipend-based programs, because the goal is to have these kids to participate in something positive, an education curriculum type program, and for them to more or less be off the streets, be in a safe space, and of course, earn a stipend after it's over with. And we always inform the parents that the stipends come 4 to 5 weeks later. Unfortunately, the stipends are coming in the first round, it came 6 weeks. And of course, this one here, it's about 8 weeks or so for the second round in the summer camps.
Thank you, Mr. Barabino. We have a card from Mr. Tiger Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman King, members of this committee. Didn't know Larry was coming here today. I've been knowing Larry for quite some time. Matter of fact, we worked together after Hurricane Katrina at the New Orleans Recreation Department. We had a big conference down here after Katrina for the National AFL-CIO during Martin Luther King. We had over 200 people participate, and they all came to volunteer their services. Worked with Larry Barabino, put 7 playgrounds together with mud and made the baseball fields good. But he brought to my attention when we was talking about it over here, he said, don't forget that your electricians and your plumbers fixed 3 playgrounds and how important that was. With Bunny Friends, St. Roch, and I don't know the one right behind the Legion Field that you was talking about. But anyway, we worked with Larry Barabino, and on behalf of this discussion here, what example are we showing to our young people if we don't pay them timely? This is where you start the learning process of becoming a grown-up. And if we can't pay these people timely, whether you're 10 years old, 13 years old, 15-year-old, before you can actually go out into the real work field, we're setting a very bad example. I would hope, and I know, I have confidence in this committee and this administration, that we can either expedite this or get it done timely. And I can't believe, because it was just a few months ago, and I know where Job 1, and I don't know if this is some of the people, wasn't paid timely by the city of New Orleans. And these are kids trying to get to the next walk of life. It fits the same mode. And I'm just appalled that we can do jobs. We can fund money for courthouses and new jails, but don't pay the people who provide the services. It's pathetic. It's ridiculous. And I know this council can get it right. And Helena, I don't know if I got, I know you had spoke about, contractors and being paid timely, and that's another issue. And I know that's not before us today, but some of the best and the brightest right here in the city of New Orleans will not fix the roads or the bridges anymore. Some of the best and the brightest won't do the mechanical, the air conditioner, or the electrical anymore because they don't get paid timely or they don't get paid at all. I would hope we can fix this in the city of Norwood at some kind of shape. We have a very good council here, and thank you for your time, but Larry, I hope you get settled for your kids, especially youth that we need to set a good example for. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge, thank you, Mr. Hammond. I want to acknowledge Council President JP Morrell. I know you came just now. Any comments? Any? Okay. Okay. Mr. Barabino, thank you for your presentation. Just want to highlight some things that were said earlier, give some numbers. About 1,100 kids participated in the NARD summer program. They were not employees, they were actually camp participants.
Yes.
1,100 kids off the streets. I want to thank you and your staff for doing that, because I could only imagine if they had an extra 1,000 kids running around with nothing to do, the situation we would be in as a city. Out the kids that didn't get paid, 52, that's about 5%. That's not what we want to be. We want to be zero, but 95% of anything is pretty good. So thank you. Getting about 95% of our kids paid on time. The other 5% is coming. And I would think it's important to point out that, again, these kids were not employees. A lot of people saying these are NARD employees. They were not employees. That's another program, but they may have worked at the NARD playgrounds, but not through NARD. I saw some reports that were a bit misleading and confusing, making people think that these were kids who were actually on NARD's payroll who didn't get paid. But I want to bring something up. You had a solution about, one of your solutions was to pre-populate. Would that mean there would be no kids off the street that come at the last minute like we had this year?
So that means, that's correct. That means that if we sent the pre-populated sign-in sheets, attendance sheets to the camps, that means that the kid couldn't just pop up without the parent coming to NARD and doing the paperwork. Not saying we would turn them away, but that means that the parent would have to come to NARD to complete the paperwork, whether it's online process going forward or whatever, but they wouldn't be able to just pop up at the camp in 10 and we see a name arbitrarily on a sign-in sheet that's not scheduled to be at the camp.
Well, I know you're trying to prevent issues in the future, but it's like you this year you took kids without any notice off the streets and paid them.
Yes.
What if the kid parent doesn't fill out a form this next year? I just want to kind of keep that in mind, because you did a great job, a commendable job of taking kids off the streets and giving them something to do and giving them food and activities and money. I just hate to see in the future a household that may not be structured. A kid doesn't have the parents to fill out the forms and they're turned away. So I know you want to do, it's kind of catch-22 in that situation.
It is, because on the unfortunate side is one of the kids that showed up and just popped up at the camp, parent was on the news saying, my child didn't get paid for working. And we had to have that parent to come and complete a full application, but that kid never did the process, but that parent was on the news saying that we didn't pay her child.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. But Mr. Barabino, thank you for coming in and give us some clarity. Any other comments?
No, listen, I want to thank the council for their continued support with NARD. Also that we're working through this with finance. We're working through this also with Job One to make sure that going forward, we can have a more seamless system, as seamless as possible, and a better process to where the teams that we serve do get paid on time. And I know that even in the finance department, they're dealing with everything New Orleans on top of taking on 2,000 to 3,000 teams during the summer months as well, so I just want to definitely make sure that our parents know when you bring your kids to NARD, that our goal is to keep your kids in a safe environment, provide safe programming. And if they're in a stipend-based program, understand that they're not working. It's a stipend-based program.
Thank you, Mr. Barabino. I think it's also important to note that there were no reported incidents at any of these camps with over 1,000 kids.
No.
So thank you for the work that you do, your staff, thank y'all, and again, just thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next on the agenda, we're going to go to item number 5 with the update from our task force, our permitting task force. So you all could come and take a seat and
Next.
again, item number 5, update from the permits task force. And if we can start by having everyone introduce themselves. Have y'all.
My name is Maddie Charleston. I'm the Vice President of the Vucre Commission Foundation. I'm also a French Quarter resident.
Thank you.
Coleman Adler, businessman in the CBD and the French Quarter.
Good morning, Danielle Del Sol, Executive Director of the Preservation Resource Center.
Frank Morris, home builder and former president of the Home Builders Association.
Zach Smith, local architect.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to point out that the diversity of this organization as far as backgrounds, we have preservationists, we have the business community, we have architect. So just an opportunity to get input from everyone with different interests, different walks of life. We started this a couple months ago when I dared to question the way that this system is working and improve the system. It was met with some pushback. Unfortunately, it was met with some inaccurate and very misleading articles, but we persevered. I want to thank my colleagues for the support. I want to thank this committee for doing this work for free. You met often. You met not just amongst yourselves, you met with community residents and organizations, and it was all done for free. I want to acknowledge that and highlight that it was all done for free. And I think that's the best way to do it. You can get people from this city who knows the ins and outs, who know the communities. You don't have to go out of city, out of state to get this information. So I'll stop talking and let you all make the presentation. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Council. Zach Smith on behalf of this committee. We wanted to have a brief presentation knowing that there's other matters before this committee. Essentially, we want to thank you guys for allowing us this opportunity to lead here. And we also want to thank the public. We want to thank the groups that we've talked to. There's many groups in the city between the AIA, Home Builders Association, representatives of unions and trade groups, and folks that regularly do work or interact with the permitting agencies, as well as leadership of several of the permitting groups that the public generally identifies with, whether it be the historic districts, whether it be the permits office directly through safety and permits, city planning commission, et cetera. One of the fundamental parts of this kind of presentation, if you will, is that in the 7 weeks we did this, as everybody up here knows, there's a lot more work to go. There are a lot more people to talk to. We didn't want this to drag on, and we wanted to make sure that there was something reasonable that was digestible. So there is a report that we're essentially putting forward. It is by no means meant to be an end all, but essentially we describe what we did, we describe who was involved, and then we issue what we believe the top 10 kind of categories or concepts are for improvement. And then we break down and we flesh out what those top 10 items are. We have an appendix included that is every comment or suggestion that we heard from the general public, whether it was in the meeting at the beginning of July or throughout our conversations on the street or conversations with leaders around the city. And then we finished that appendix with essentially our list of, these are the things we really think you should hone in on and do. They include itemized asks for staffing in the permitting agencies with general concepts of budget that would go with that. You'll see that towards the end of that appendix. One of the big fundamental things, though, that we want to talk about today, and by all means, anybody at the table, please jump in, is staffing. There are a lot of folks working in this city. You guys see them day in, day out. One of the things we want to focus on is the tone sometimes. The public can misinterpret the lack of staff sometimes as unwilling staff or unable staff. There's a great deal of very motivated staff in these permitting offices that are working hard. Sometimes they can be frustrated with us. Sometimes we can be frustrated with them, but across the board, there are some very good staff working. Unfortunately, the number one thing we have suggested as a group is the need for additional resources and funding and staffing. And to that point, one of our fundamental points here is we've noticed that there's quite a few positions from the 2020 budget or budgets before that have not been filled or staffed. And working through questions and answers with associated agencies and using my own previous history, it's something that's going to come very clearly in this report is we would ask that the budget team through the council continue to hold the feet to the fire of the administration to make sure that the money that you guys actually allocate gets spent. We continue to find that money or positions are forced to essentially remain unfilled, and therefore the power of the purse is really not effective.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, I have a couple of questions
Yes, sir.
related to that point. First is, we've heard from the administration that they're working on a consulting report involving all these agencies. I see some heads nodding at the table. Do we know the status of that report?
Right now, speaking on behalf of the group, no, we don't know. One of the only things we know is that the administration was able to find the money and spend about $300,000 on a report that, as Mr. King pointed out, this group spent 7 weeks and did for free. So we would hope that the administration can find the way to spend the rest of the money allocated that you guys set aside.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you're tapping into knowingly a source of frustration for us, which is I can buy the light bulbs, but I can't make the administration screw them in. And this is on a number of different issues where we've allocated money to catch basins, to victims, to other things, and it's just not being spent. And also, we have repeatedly asked safety and permits, HDLC, VCC, if you need more people, we need to know that. If salary is an issue, we need to know that. So I feel a little stuck at this moment because I don't know the right market rate to pay somebody. I don't know what the most important jobs that there are to fund if we're going to triage, because that's where we are now, is in a system where permits aren't being handled appropriately. I don't know that the council has any problem appropriating more money. But two things: A, we got to know that it's being well spent, and B, if they're sitting on money, and this is for any department, then it makes it hard to keep on giving money and saying money is the problem when in fact it's execution.
And I think that's a very fair point. And that's one of our parts with staffing, where we went outside the box here and didn't say, hey, we just need to spend more money. There's a good deal of explanation as to ways in which we believe that the council could better control those dollars to actually be spent, and auditing essentially the finance department, which we unfortunately heard of the terrors of children not being paid in the city of New Orleans due to errors in the finance department. From personal experience, I've seen the November, pony show, where what you actually want, you're not allowed to say in public. We've, through interviews of some staff and through a lot of investigation with agencies that regularly involve themselves with or try to oversee some of these agencies, it's one of the reasons why we came up with this list that's later on in the appendix of these positions. We believe that a regular audit of essentially how this money has actually been unlocked would be something that would get there. I know that this council, specifically through you, Mr. Giarrusso, was able to play a little bit of chicken with the administration last year on unlocking dollars and unlocking positions with enforcement. And it seemed to have worked. So we would welcome this committee to do so again. Something that everybody in this room, whether they're for more enforcement, they believe that enforcement's too lax, or it's folks that don't think enforcement's too lax, but they want to see faster permitting times. There is a absolute need for more staff. We believe that the departments are ready and willing to spend those dollars. I've never seen a bureaucrat that doesn't want to spend a dollar. And the idea that you guys budget that money and it doesn't get spent leads us to believe that there are certain bureaucrats not allowed to spend those dollars. So we don't exactly have an answer. I'll turn it over to the other four, but we believe that there is a disconnect between what you guys budget and what the departments are actually allowed to spend. And we believe if that kink were undone in the hose, that we'd see this staffing happen. Again, COVID 4 years old. The Great Resignation is no longer a term we're hearing. We're seeing people regularly looking for work, and we're seeing a lot of positions somehow unfillable in the Department of Safety and Permits, City Planning, Vucare, et cetera. We think that the administration could be watched a little bit more strongly.
There was some trepidation amongst department heads to contribute to our report in a non-anonymous manner, but luckily for us, they got over it and were willing to share with us details about specific positions they need filled, about salary struggles they have with keeping talented and educated staff members in their departments, and the civil service, the problems getting around increasing salaries easily to make adjustments as needed. And then very specific recommendations such as taking the adjudication process outside of the safety and permit staff duties and how much time that would free up for that department. So there are, like Zach said, there are specific numbers and details in the appendix. And so my hope is that since these department heads are willing to share such specifics with us, that they would be willing to do so with you as well, because what we heard over and over again, that it was not their desire to not spend money or to sit on money, but rather that requests would be made and be sent up to the big office, and then no one would hear anything again. So
I have a question, Ms. Del Sol. Thank you for your comment. You were done? I was curious to, you mentioned the adjudication process, and God knows not mentioned that being moved around. It was arrows and pitchforks, but it seems like, if I heard you correctly, that it was some suggestion that the safety and permits adjudication process not stop, but just be moved to somewhere else. What is that? Where is that somewhere else?
That was a recommendation that came to us from the safety and permits department. That was a recommendation that was made given the current circumstances of the department as it is now. If you allocated more money to bring in more staff and resources, perhaps that move wouldn't even be necessary.
Okay.
We didn't delve deep enough to really understand and make a recommendation ourselves. That was just feedback that we got that we reported out in this report.
Okay.
But it really all came down to staff being completely overwhelmed with volume, and there not being nearly enough people to process all of this in a timely manner.
And this report, was it given to the different departments? Is it public, or how can someone get their hands on it?
We'll have a
It's up to you.
digital file. Essentially, in order to maintain and confirm that, there was no meddling in this, or that there was no oversight of this, and that the five of us acted independently. Your staff did not receive this until about 9:45 when we asked y'all to print a copy for us for this presentation. So consider the report as emailed public, but we'll be happy to make additional copies.
Thank you.
Councilman, I might add too, that
Yeah.
these are simple solutions that can be expounded upon as need be. And I think that what happens here is, although it's a few pages of documentation, it's very simple solutions that have to be able to solve the problem, be implemented. And if we don't do that, if we continue to do what we're doing, then the one building inspector on the street is going to remain the one building inspector on the street. And we just can't do that in this city and expect economic development to rise.
So, Mr. Morris, as a person who has built homes all over the Southeast and has filled out your fair share of applications and permits, give us a difference between here and somewhere else and how that affects your ability to want to work with the city.
Just on a simple building permit for a residential application, in two different jurisdictions comparatively, I'd say at least a month and a half minimum to be able to get a permit here. And a lot of times it's an unknown of where the slowdown is or the lack of information is being produced to come back. So I think that in here, we do document and do note that that is one of the issues that is prevalent. But it's a good month and a half to 2 months, sometimes longer.
And can you, as far as finances, how much does it cost when you're taking a month and a half to 2 months for a permit?
Well, we're talking sometimes double the cost in other jurisdictions. I mean, it's crazy when I look at what I got to pay in the sense of New Orleans and what I have to pay in another jurisdiction for a permit. I mean, we're talking thousands in my case.
Well, I mean, the cost, how much does the cost affect your bottom line when you?
It costs drastic. First of all, we already have a lack of labor, right? So what happens is we can't guide ourselves on how we're going to be able to start to do somebody's job. And then the other thing is the economic impact here in the city is that you don't get anything out of it until it becomes a reality. Even on re-subdivision in English term, which is an easy one, took me 3.5 months to get through. And thanks to your help, we finally got it through with your employees, that staff that helped us through that process.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. King, to that point, when you delay something by 1 month, you know, you potentially you run the risk of paying for 1 extra month's rent for your apartment where you might be trying to move into the new house. You're looking at 1 more month of paying for that insurance for the builder's risk policy. You're looking for 1 more month of paying the note on that construction loan. You are looking at all sorts of things every time you're hitting the next month. If I may revisit something with Mr. Giarrusso, there's a specific point that I think that folks can get through, and it's the P5. If I remember correctly, the P5 is essentially the way in which a person gets hired in the city of New Orleans. It is the most bureaucratic thing out there in terms of civil service. It's a combination. It still requires an actual sign off by, I believe, the CFO or designee and the CAO or his designee. And if you ever track this P5s, you can pretty much figure out who wants to kill a potential, fillable job. So auditing the P5s in departments, because people will always request them, but if they don't get finished from on high, you can't actually hire somebody. So I'd audit the P5. I'd start there and figure out where that cart has been coming off the tracks. Some other points that came up again and again was the request for transparency. This is both on the enforcement side, so that folks that are looking in wanting to oversee permits can better understand the process and where a permit may be in its life. And also, of course, for the builder, the homeowner, the business owner, seeing where they are. Something that came to us through the committee was a recommendation actually from the Home Builders Association to improve the one-stop, specifically the print summary app, to be more of a decision tree. What happens all too often is that you apply for a permit, and over the course of the 2 weeks or the 4 weeks or the 6 weeks or the 8 weeks, more and more boxes are checked. And you may be surprised one day, you may go to sleep one night where only 2 or 3 departments are reviewing your plans, and you wake up the next morning and there's been 2 or 3 additional agencies added. There's been a request to match some of the other jurisdictions where essentially all of the available reviewing departments are attached to your project from the very beginning. And over time, those things are deleted off, closed, rather than potentially added on. So you as an end user know all of the potential options for review. This seems to be something that works, obviously, again, in the kind of the negative or the opposite way in some other jurisdictions. And it leads it to where the public is never surprised by an agency. They know from day one that they may have to see 10 different agencies, and through a little bit of early investment, they're able to figure out, wait, I don't need to see them. I don't need to see them. It's not sprung on them on a later time. Something we heard again and again, the one stop, as somebody who was in the department when the one stop app came on board, You know, they love to see the word beta or us to graduate from the beta of the one stop. You know, 10 years seems like a little too long to be in that kind of field. And then we go into same sort of deal. And we believe that again, at the end of this, the staff that are there are trying to work hard every day. But returning emails and answering the phone, this comes to sometimes policy. And I know the seven folks that preside in this chamber cannot direct any staff to do this. But it would be beneficial, in our opinion, to have the auto reply all emails removed, to have the "we're too busy, we can't get back to you" emails. It's a very, very hard email to get from the general public when their first interaction with government is, "Sorry, we're a little too busy for you. We understand, we know that you're too busy," but it's a very bad tone to set. We see all too often the complaints came in. The email says to call, you get a voicemail, the voicemail says to email. You know, there has to be a protocol. There has to be this is how we expect you to do it, and this is how we expect to do the work. And that way you can actually set what accountability and what success looks like. Right now, there is no true level of what success looks like for permitting as a whole in the city of New Orleans. And that includes all of the affiliate agencies that work. You know, safety and permits usually is the lightning rod for the frustration. There are a lot of other departments that do great work as well, but often are the accessory reason for why a permit might not be issuable.
And just to, pardon 1 second, but just to implement the decision tree for people that are applying for a permit would eliminate a majority of all those little calls that we're talking about here that would not need to have somebody trying to find out information because the information is already available. Just an easy one.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, any other comments before we get the,
I would like to say one thing.
Yes.
All this came about from a moratorium on the VCC, and I think we all can agree that through our suggestions and notes that the VCC does not need less enforcement. We do realize, you know, a year without enforcement can cause a lot of issues, and listed in the appendix shows those budgeting needs as well.
got it. Thank
Also would like to note that ABOs and their issuance was a big talking point at the beginning of all of this. With the exception of Zach, we are mostly building people. And so we really focused on, you know, buildings and issuance of permits as such. We would suggest that perhaps to delve deeper into ABOs, a separate committee could be created or something like that, but we didn't really go into that here. The one thing we did do was ask department heads, you know, about the claim that ABOs are being withheld for anything less than life safety issues. They said that wasn't true. So we're not here to be the judge of that. That's not what we're here to do, but it does warrant going deeper. It's just not us to do that.
Those comments are listed on both sides in the appendix as well.
Absolutely. And so to kind of third that, there's a lot of discussion for ABOs. We heard a lot from more enforcement, less enforcement, faster permits, slower permits. We definitely think that you and your team are perfectly primed to have a robust discussion on ABOs, because it's something that everybody has had a comment on. Because there was this kind of pending legislation, we wanted to allow that to remain in the public forum. But overall, commentary, review, reworking is definitely something that we support and believe needs to be.
So I see on the page 16, you mentioned ABO, it says allow 60 to 90 days. Number 2, can you elaborate on that for us, please?
So that was a comment that came through, and and the rest of the committee can speak as well. There's an overarching issue sometimes at the end of a permit where a permit's you've already gone to City Hall, you've already asked for your approval. You've already been given your approval. You've already been reviewed for zoning. You've already been reviewed for this. You go out and you build it. You would make the investment. And then at the very end, there becomes this additional kind of layer of let's go review and make sure that we're really actually okay with you opening up this business kind of in this kind of primary sort of way. And we find, in my opinion, and I don't believe it's completely shared by the committee, in my opinion, there tends to be this tends to be a way in which the process can be slowed down. This can be a way in which a project that has nothing that's inherently wrong with it or nothing known to be wrong with it now goes through this extra set of review where it's being reviewed for, is it allowed by zoning in the first place? Well, again, this was already reviewed for zoning months before when that permit was issued. So there does seem to be an ability to have something where the city is allowed to make its comment or make its review. But if it's not able to do so in a timely fashion, and you see this spelled out with a couple of these different agencies, if you're not allowed to do something, if you don't do something in kind of a timely way, that it becomes essentially automatic, still on this temporary kind of level, but you're able to allow that business to move forward. Again, the business didn't go construct itself without that preliminary zoning review. It didn't go build without the preliminary health review or the preliminary state fire marshal review. So having this, let's stop and make sure that everybody is cool with it when the state fire marshal has already turned in their final paperwork, when the health department has turned in its final paperwork, I believe there is an ability to essentially allow that to be expedited at the end, keeping the administration, keeping the ABO department, still with essentially with the final trigger. But if an action can't be taken in a reasonable time, and we believe that reasonable time is something that the council needs to discuss in a more robust way, that a business owner, an occupational license, et cetera, not be penalized at the end of the process, especially knowing that sometimes those delays are because of staffing issues and nothing else.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I also just want to quickly acknowledge Ms. Ashley Spears from the law department who helped, who was a part of the legal side of the task force, and Mr. Brian Block, Ms. Tammy Jackson for talking to you all. Didn't have to do that, but just being good partners and trying to see a solution come out of this. I want to thank those two for their help. So at this time, we'll go to the public comments. Mr. Tiger Hammond. Okay. There's an online comment we'll get to later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman King, once again, and members of this committee. I'm Robert Tiger Hammond, president of Greater New Orleans AFL-CIO, representing about 17,000 union workers in the Greater New Orleans area. Here with me today, probably a dozen of the biggest, the brightest, and the best when it comes to doing work in the city of New Orleans. I come to you today to say we rise in support of what we're trying to do today. We don't know exactly everything that's on the agenda. We found out about this committee meeting a week ago, but I commend you, Mr. King, as well as this committee for bringing this up because it's long overdue. I hate to bring up a sore subject, and I didn't even talk to none of my colleagues behind me about this, but it just dawned on me that, the Hard Rock Cafe, Hard Rock Hotel, in the collapse. It was just 3 weeks prior to that these brothers back here is representing probably 7 or 8 different trades, including all the ones that's licensed, electrical, mechanical, and operating engineers, were hand-billing that job, saying it was unskilled and unqualified and unlicensed people on that job. 3 weeks later, there was a collapse, and we knew what happened after that. Again, this is long overdue. I'd just like to bring up a few comments. I was a business manager of IBW Local 130 from 1993 to 2009. So after Hurricane Katrina, things was in shambles around here. But back then we had 2 chief inspectors. If anybody goes back that far, and some of you guys around here know, we had Larry Chan and Ralph Kastner. But we had about 6 other inspectors there. And they were all from the IBEW, needed to be state licensed, and I can name them all, but I'm not going to name them all. After Katrina, it got down to 2. I think it was Charlie Hollins and Steve, I can't even remember his last name. Y'all might remember with the gray hair, gray, big long mustache, but they stayed with the City of New Orleans Inspectors Department. But the other 5, because I think they got a grant from the federal government, they went. And I was proud of those 2 guys that stayed with the City of New Orleans because they was making some money, and don't quote me to these prices, 35, 36, 37,000 a year. And with their grant, these guys were making 60,000 plus. So they was getting almost double the money, the five that left this city of New Orleans and left this department. And when they left, yeah, they was popping, but doing the same work. I don't see that happening again today. I think today, and I may be mistaken, I know you have Tammy Jackson at the top and you have a chief inspector, and I think you have one inspector. Can't do all the work with one inspector. I don't know if we still, getting money from the federal government, but it is not being policed out there, I can tell you that. I'm gonna get away from that, but that has been a major problem because even with, the laws we have in the books right here,